forgot to record that part. Guys, if you're just coming in now with the recording, I'm sorry, I forgot to start the recording. If you've got any questions about the first two slides that we've gone through, they're available on Moodle. Please let me know. Okay, how can you study for this exam? Well, you don't have a lot of time to study, but and that's why I always tell people don't leave studying for the exams until the week of the exams. Ideally, if you are a good students always study through the semester. After every lecture, they're doing a little bit of revision, reading their notes, writing notes, making sure they understand the lectures. Also, review and redo the assignments. Some of you have probably cheated on some of the assignments and got good marks, which you did not deserve. That's going to come undone for you in the exam. Look at the model solutions that are on YouTube, on a Moodle, and compare your answers with the model solution and see where you can improve. Also, many of you will not have a lot of time to do an in-depth study into the entire curriculum, but use the assignments to identify where you are weakest. There's no point spending a lot of time on aggregate if that's where you did really well. Finally, just one thing, where people did weakest in the assignments generally, they were aggregate, cement, and also wood and wood products. That was the weakest that most of you did in those assignments. So maybe focus on those areas more so than concrete or masonry. Mohammed Meridal, you've got a question?
Yes. If our assignment answers are correct but not exactly like the ones on Moodle, will you cut marks?
No, I'm fairly generous with how I mark the assignments. You don't need to answer me word for word. I also don't take marks off for bad English, so long as I understand what you're meaning. Yeah, I'm fairly. I think I'm reasonably kind in how I mark. But did you have a question in mind, Mohammed, that you had you answered?
Because you know, the last time I came to Zoom, you told me my cement assignment mark, and I compared it to the Moodle, and mine were fairly.
Okay.
Like I didn't have any 100% incorrect answer, and I still got a really bad mark.
What was your mark?
It was a 59.
Okay.
And you said that you check it again.
Yeah, I will check cement again. Your mark might go up. But yeah, I haven't been doing the marking for the assignments. So Mr. Hauker, who's an assistant lecturer and also the lab supervisor for the civil engineering department, he's been marking it. So he potentially marked that a little bit tougher than I would have. I'm not sure, but I will be going back and remarking that when I get a moment. But I don't think you can expect that your mark is going to go up 40-50%. Okay, Mohammed. So Hauker is generally a little bit of a tougher marker than me, but yeah, I'll see what he did. Okay, but yeah, everyone got reasonably low marks there, so I think it's worth reviewing that, and I will do that and let you know how your marks change. Okay. So what does this exam cover? It covers everything in the curriculum. So you could be getting questions on anything here. The history and theory of building materials, the historical overview, which we did in week 1. Aggregate, cement, concrete, masonry, wood and wood products, and also bitumen and asphalt. And because there was no assignment on bitumen and asphalt, there will be a little bit more questions on bitumen and asphalt. Roughly around 20, around 20% of the questions you get will be on bitumen and asphalt. Just be aware of that. So there's no point me giving you I can't give you a full-on review of everything we've covered. So basically, these review pages, these are just given to you in bullet points, just as a way of reminding you of the things you need to cover and what you need to study. So in the history and theory of concrete materials, we talked about how through history, materials were used for various purposes, and basically the influencer that influenced whether a material was used or not was compatibility and availability. And so it's all very well using diamond as an axe head because it's compatible, because diamonds are very hard and you can get them really sharp, and they're also very strong, but the availability is just not there, so you're never going to do that. We also talked about certain properties of materials and how materials were tested. And those properties, they can basically go into three groups. Physical properties, so how strong something is, how hard something is. Mechanical properties, sorry, that I just gave you mechanical properties. Physical properties would be something like hardness, durability. Mechanical would be strength, compression strength, tension strength, that sort of thing. And then chemical properties. Does it erode with water? Is it water resistant? Does acid make it rust? And so on and so on. With aggregate, because this was the first material we looked at a number of different properties, which we then used in other materials as well. So we talked about certain kinds of rocks that are available. We talked about porosity, absorption capacity. We talked about density and specific gravity, bulk density, void ratios. You need to know about all of these. How do we measure moisture content? Remember, that depends whether we're trying to find the surface water content, if we're trying to find the absorption capacity, the porosity, or the moisture content of any rock that's found in the wild. But remember, aggregate is not just rock. It's basically a compendium of many rocks put together. So we talked about grading. What are all of the aggregate particles, their sizes, their range of sizes. And we talked a lot about how to do sieve analysis. We then also talked about hardness and brittleness. And with that came the Los Angeles test. And so the Los Angeles test, that tests both hardness and brittleness together. So even if you put a material that was very hard in the Los Angeles test, something like ceramic, it's still going to smash it up and break it to a pulp, because even though ceramic is very hard, meaning it's very hard to scratch, ceramic is also very brittle. And so, yeah, remember that brittleness, hardness, strength, they are not the same thing. And so keep that in mind, because you can get certain materials which are very hard but are very brittle. You can get certain materials which are very hard and very stable, meaning not brittle, but they have no strength. Ceramic, for example, has amazing compression strength. I won't do this, but this coffee mug, it's got coffee in it, so I can't turn it over. But if I flipped it over and put it on the floor, I could stand on it. It wouldn't break. because ceramic has very good strength. But if I threw it against the wall, it would smash to pieces. That's actually something that I normally do in class, just to try and teach people about aggregate and different properties. Can't do that with online learning. But anyway, with that, that's just an example that strength, hardness, brittleness, they're not the same thing. With cements, remember we talked about hydraulic cements. Those are cements that basically react with water and form a new molecule. Non-hydraulic cements, they change with water, but then when the water evaporates, they go back to a final product which doesn't have any of the water element inside them. And latent hydraulic cements, they are cements which must first react with another cement before they can react with water. So we talked about lime and gypsum and Portland cement. We talked about different properties of all of those. Remember to know what is the difference between heat of hydration and hydration reaction rate. That seems to be a common mistake. Hydration reaction rate is about how fast the cement reacts. Heat of hydration is about how much heat comes off the reaction, how hot it gets. We also did quite a focus on Portland cement because that is by far the most common cement these days that we use in civil engineering. And we looked at a few different kinds of Portland cement, the different types. And we also talked about some latent hydraulic cements, which were basically cements that were a blend of Portland cement with something else. And so one of the most famous ones is pozzolan Portland cement. The great thing about pozzolan Portland cement, pozzolan is basically ash from a volcano, is it has very low shrinkage. So remember that. We covered shrinkage later when we did concrete. So those were the types of Portland cement. And so they all behave slightly differently, and it all has to do with their composition. Remember, Portland cement is made up of lots of different things, but the three main elements inside it are, sorry, element is the wrong chemical word. The three main ingredients inside it are dicalcium silicate, tricalcium silicate, and tricalcium aluminate. Also, the other thing you need to remember, guys, is having some idea on how Portland cement is manufactured. So then we looked at the properties of concrete. So remember, concrete is basically a blend of aggregate, cement, and water. And we also talked about hardening and setting. And this is rather confusing because it doesn't, hardening is maybe not the best word for it, but setting, that is when your concrete is wet and it goes solid. So it goes from being liquid to solid, or sludge to solid. That's setting. Now, a lot of people think of that as being hardening because it is getting harder, which kind of makes sense. But hardening is actually something that happens after the concrete has set and gone solid. Basically, over time, even though the concrete is now solid, there is still cement and water molecules which are still reacting inside it. And this could be happening for weeks, months into the future. And basically, as they react, they're making new strong chemical bonds. And so hardening is basically the process of letting solid, weak concrete go to being solid, strong concrete. Hardening is about concrete getting stronger. It's not about the concrete getting harder. And so the hydration rate is all about how fast this happens. But the issue is with a fast hydration rate, that can lead to lower strength. Why is that? Well, if it's reacting quickly, what's going to happen? Generally, what happens is that as it's reacting quickly, it doesn't give time for water to actually come into contact with cement. So it goes solid very quickly, and then the cement particles inside the concrete that have not reacted with water, they can only react with water that they are touching. And so because of that, if there's no water around it, it will just remain as an unreacted cement molecule. And so fast hydration rates, they can lead to a lower strength sometimes. Also, heat of hydration, that's very important, because if it gets hot, that's going to evaporate water, and that means there will be no water in the solid concrete that will be left for unreacted cement to react with. So concrete is a little bit more for those who like chemistry, I will say, although I try to keep as much chemistry out of this module as possible. Curing, what's that? Well, that's about keeping the concrete wet, so that basically water will not evaporate out of the set solid concrete. It will stay inside, so it will react with the cement. We talked about workability and the slump test, segregation and ways to avoid segregation. We also talked about bleeding, which is a kind of segregation. And then we talked a lot about compressive strength. We didn't talk too much about the other strengths, because concrete is usually used because of its good compressive strength. If you want good tensile strength, you normally combine concrete with steel, which has good tensile strength, and that's called reinforced concrete. The modulus of elasticity, we touched on that. At a very microscopic level, concrete is actually flexible, and it flexes a tiny amount, but that can lead to something called creep. Shrinkage, most of you did really well with this. You seem to understand shrinkage, but this is something that can happen while the concrete is hardening. Cracks can start to emerge because when water and cement react, they form a new product which is slightly smaller in volume, so the concrete is shrinking slightly, and that can cause cracks. Also, excess water will evaporate, and that causes it to shrink too. There's two kinds of shrinkage: plastic shrinkage, the first one, and drying shrinkage, the second. We also talked about other problems that you can find with hardened concrete. We talked about alkali silica reactions, not very common in Kurdistan, but freeze-thaw reactions or cracking. That's something that's a big problem in Kurdistan. And we'll talk more about that when we do the concrete technology module. I believe that'll be for you next semester when we get back from the summer. So we then went into masonry, and we looked at this a bit from a historical perspective, because masonry started off as rubble masonry with stone rubble. And then they started thinking, well, why don't we start cutting it to more modular shapes? And that's ashlar masonry. And there's advantages and disadvantages with both. We then talked a little bit about how you bond or keep the masonry blocks together. English, Flemish bonds, stretcher bonds, header bonds. We talked about double bonds, where basically you've got a wall that is twice as thick. We did a tiny bit on cavity walls and insulation. And then we talked about the material itself with clay-fired bricks or clay oven bricks, and yeah, why we use those. And the great property of clay oven bricks is that they've got reasonably good insulation compared to concrete blocks. So I don't know if any of you live in homes which were made from clay oven bricks. Maybe you lived in an old house in the older part of the city that had a clay oven brick. Basically, you don't need to use your AC nearly as much because the insulation is far better. We also talked about water absorption capacity. High absorption capacity is a bad thing if it has good high porosity, because that leads to it basically breaking down. It has no durability. But you need some absorption capacity. And why is that? Because you need to have some absorption capacity so the blocks can stick to one another and the mortar will actually stick to the block. So yeah, that's the reason why we can't use high quality concrete with a very low absorption capacity for masonry blocks. They just wouldn't stick together. We also talked about how reinforcement is becoming a very big thing in masonry, because they have no shear strength, or a masonry wall has no shear strength or tensile strength or flexural strength in and of its own. It's just good in compression. But if you have steel bars inside it, which has good tensile strength, that can mean your building is strong in an earthquake. It will stand up in an earthquake, because in an earthquake, the building is facing shear forces. And so I think I showed you a few pictures of the ancient city of Bam, which was completely destroyed in an earthquake, I think in 2007, because of no reinforcement in the masonry walls. We then went into wood and wood products. So we talked about softwoods and hardwoods, heartwood and sapwood. Know these terms. A hardwood is not necessarily harder than a softwood. So a wood that is soft is not a softwood. A wood that is hard is not a hardwood. That's not what it means. It's referring to whether it's from a tree which is evergreen or deciduous, meaning that it loses all of its leaves in the fall. And basically hardwoods, they tend to be more expensive because the trees basically hibernate through the winter. And so they're not growing. They only grow for maybe 6 months, 9 months of the year, whereas softwoods grow all year round. You also need to understand a little bit about the structure of wood cells, how they're actually lots of tiny little fibers which are stuck together with a resin that's called lignin. And that's why wood has really, really good tensile and flexural strength. It's really good. It's better than, it's really taken human beings thousands of years to really develop materials better than wood fibers for tensile strength. You can use steel cables, often have better tensile strength, and also carbon fibers may have, not always, they can have better tensile strength too. So we talked about moisture content and how that influences strength. Basically, it has some influence for compression or durability, but not both. I can't remember which. You're going to have to research that. I do mention that though in the lecture slides. But moisture content can influence durability, because if you have water inside the wood, you're going to have problems with fungi, bacteria, and insects. But also, if the moisture content keeps going up and down, such as if it keeps raining and it gets wet and then it dries out, it's going to be shrinking and swelling, and that's going to cause cracks and for the lignin to dry out, and the resin holding the fibers together will disappear, and basically you start getting cracks in the wood. We also talked about malleability, which is basically how much can you bend wood. And the way we basically can improve that is by increasing the moisture content, and it will then be able to bend further, and then you dry it out, and then it will stay in its bent shape. So that's actually, you may have seen some of the cool curvatures that are cool curved shapes that were being made. I showed a few cool pictures of bent wood or malleable wood. We talked about tensile and compressive strength differences between them. We also talked about this phenomenon called buckling. You don't need to know too much about that. You may get one question in the exam, but that's basically if you have a piece of wood which is very long and skinny, potentially its compressive strength will not be realized, because if you put a compressive load on it, it's basically going to buckle. So if I'm squeezing my pen, potentially the pen will start to bend into a banana, and it's going to break in flexural load rather than compression. So that's a problem with timber that you need to be aware of. We also talked a little bit about plywood and particle board as two wood products. And also, if you didn't see the video that I posted on YouTube, not on YouTube, I put a link to a YouTube video on Moodle of them making plywood. I think it is by far the most interesting video in the building materials module. It's very cool. So watch that. Then we got to bitumen and asphalt. At this point, I'm going to stop because it sounds like most of you haven't actually watched the bitumen and asphalt lectures. So I'm going to stop right here. But remember, this will be about 20% of the assignment. So be aware of that, guys. Make sure you go through the lectures and phone me if you have any questions, if anything is unclear. Write good notes for bitumen and asphalt. And if you have anything that needs to be cleared up, we can Zoom call one another too. So keep that in mind. So guys, I want to give you an opportunity to just have a taste of what the questions will be like. They will all be multi-choice. They will all have about four answers to choose from. I've got a list of, I think, 3, 4, 5 questions here. I can't quite remember. I want to give you an opportunity to not call out the answer, but to just have maybe 2 minutes for each question, choose your answer, and then when we're done, and then after 2 minutes, I'll go to the next question, have a go at answering that, and then when we're done, when we've done all the questions, we'll go back and discuss the answer. Okay, question 1. You've got 2 minutes to think of the answer. Don't call it out, just keep it to yourself. Maybe put your hand up or give me a thumbs up when you've chosen your answer. No one knows this answer? No one's finished? Well, that's quite concerning because this is what I considered an easy question. No one has got the answer. No thumbs up? Nothing? Okay, guys. Well, you've had about 2 minutes. So at this stage, you've probably got to guess the answer and move on. So question 2. Oh, guys, sorry. That's that question. That's from previous year. We didn't get to alloys. Ignore that question. Question 3. Anyone know the answer? I'm not seeing any hands up or thumbs up for people letting me know when they finished. Okay, good work, Nora. Okay, let's move on. Good work, Vian. Nora, good work. Okay, question 5. I'm not giving you enough time here. You can work a little bit slower than that on the exam day. Okay, guys, I think we're done. So, yeah, take your hands off. Yeah, unmute yourselves. But how many of you put question for question 1? Select the hardest aggregate. How many of you chose A? How many of you chose B? Okay. How many of you chose C? Okay. And how many of you chose limestone, D? Okay, so maybe I haven't seen everyone's hands, but was it only Vian who said that C was the right answer? Yeah. So remember, guys, with it's not MPa. MPa is megapascals. That's a measure of strength, not hardness. The Los Angeles test measures hardness. And the lower the percentage, that means the smaller the amount that is turned to dust. And that means it's the smaller the percentage, the harder the element is. So C is the hardest aggregate. So did only one person get that, Vian? Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. Question 3, sorry. Okay. What kind of cement is commonly used in wallpaper? Who put lime? In wall plaster, wallpaper, good grief. In wall plaster. How many of you selected A? How many of you selected B? Okay. Nora and Omar. Okay. And Sermid. Okay. Anna. How many of you selected D? Oh. How many of you selected B? Sorry. C. Oh, gosh. Okay. Guys, in wall plaster, it's gypsum. Remember, so the answer is B. The gypsum is white, weak, and attractive. Remember that. It's and so when you before you paint the walls, and you want to make the walls really smooth, ready for painting, and they put that white stuff on the wall, that's plaster. That's mostly made out of gypsum. Just be aware of that. Mubin, did you have a question? Mubin, do you have a question? Okay, I'm just going to lower your hand, Mubin. I thought you had a question. Okay, question 4. What is the heat of hydration? How many of you put A? How many of you put B? How many of you put C? Okay. Good. And how many of you put D? Okay, guys, that's good. The answer is C. Remember, do not confuse heat of hydration with hydration reaction rate. The reaction rate is about how fast the reaction happens. The heat of hydration is about how much heat comes off the reaction. They are not necessarily the same. Lime, for example, has a very slow hydration reaction rate, but there's a lot of heat coming off it. It has a very high heat of hydration. So remember that. Question 5. What is the strongest kind of masonry bonds? How many of you put A, stretcher bonds? How many of you put B, English bonds? Good. Okay, how many of you put Flemish bonds, C? How many of you put D? Okay. Kurdish bonds don't exist, but if they did exist, I'm sure they would be the strongest kind of masonry bond. We could call them Peshmerga bonds or something. Anyway, yeah, the answer is B, English bonds. So Flemish bonds and English bonds are both particularly strong, but English bonds are just a little bit stronger than Flemish bonds. So does everyone know what I mean when I'm talking about bonds? Okay, I hope so, because you all did pretty well with the masonry assignment, if I remember correctly. So guys, these are sort of typical questions you're going to get in the midterm, in the final exam at 9 a.m. Thursday, the 9th of July. And you will have to answer 25 such questions. You will all have different questions, all of similar level of hardness. They will be randomized both in the order of the questions and in the order of choices for answer. So do not copy one another. Oh, I didn't realize there's another question here for question 6. Select the true statement here. I'll give you 2 minutes to do that.
Sir, we can't hear you.
Thanks. Hi guys, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my apologies, guys. My internet just cut off for a moment. I'll just go back to sharing the screen. Okay, guys, question 6. Select the true statement. I'll give you a moment to think about that. Okay, how many of you selected A? How many of you selected B? How many of you selected C? How many of you selected D? So I didn't get a single hand up here, so has no one answered the question? Good grief, guys. You need to focus on your wood and wood products. I don't want you losing marks there. But the answer is A. Heartwood is always stronger than sapwood. So remember, heartwood is the wood in the very center of the tree, and sapwood is further on the outside. And the heartwood is always denser and stronger. Hardwood and softwood, it really depends on the breed of tree. Some hardwoods are stronger than some softwoods are stronger than some hardwoods. And hardwood, softwood has nothing to do with hardness. Very confusing, I know. I apologize for that. And also, some softwoods have tension, compression. It really depends on the breed of tree. There isn't really a generalization there to make. So yeah, answer is A. Question 7. In order to emulsify bitumen, we mix it with what? I think only one of you might be able to answer this, but this is in the bitumen lecture. Anyone want to hazard a guess? Okay, let's just see how you do, because you're potentially going to get a question where you just don't have a clue what the answer is, and you're just going to have to make an educated guess. How many of you say A? Okay. Mubin is trying to help you here. You can't do this in the exam, but he's saying it's not B and C. That's a thought. How many of you say B? How many of you say C? Okay, a couple of you. How many of you say D? No one for D. Okay, Gailan, good work. Good work, Gailani. It's D. You add soap to the bitumen, which may seem a little bit odd, but when you mix kerosene with the bitumen, that's called cutback. It's different to emulsifying. Cement, you'd never mix with bitumen. Water, you cannot mix water with bitumen. Bitumen is an oil, Aween. I saw you raise your hand. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you can't mix water with oil, can you? But you can mix soap with oil. That's how we clean our hands. If your hands are dirty, you've got oil on your hands, and if you just try to wash them underwater, they wouldn't clean. But if you add soap, that emulsifies the oil in your hands and makes it into lots of small bubbles, and then it washes off with the water. That's what you do with bitumen too, to make it more workable so you can spread it out. So that's question 7. So Good work, Gailan. You would have got that one right in the exam. So, guys, that's all I've got for questions for you. But are there any questions at this stage that you have? And also, I have a few questions for you. I want to know, if you have any thoughts or feedback on how I can improve this module and how I can improve as a teacher, you can be completely honest with me. I won't be upset with you if you tell me, sir, you really need to work on being a teacher. You're not very good at this. I'm quite happy for that. Just give me criticism and please let me know, because I want to improve as a teacher. I'll be teaching you for other modules. So if there's anything that's been good in this module and how I've taught it, let me know. If there's been things that have been bad, please let me know that too. So I'm going to shut the sharing now. Are there any questions at this stage? About, yep, Vian?
For the exam, is it like 25 questions in total or 50? Because he said 50 questions.
Okay, so there will be 25 questions that you will need to answer, Vian, but they will be taken from a pool of 50 questions. So the 25 questions that you answer will not necessarily be the same 25 questions that Lana answers or that Aween answers, because they will be taken from a pool of 50 questions. Also, the questions will be in random order and the answers will be in random order. So basically, because you've only got 1 hour, you can't work together. Okay?
And we can't go back and forth between the questions?
No, you can't go back and forth between the questions. You answer a question and then that question is taken away from you. You can't go back and change your answer. And that's to try and stop people trying to work together, because you should be doing this exam on your own.
Okay, sir, but we talked with other teachers and some teachers said it's okay to answer if we like skip one question and go to the other question and then go back to the other question, it's fine.
No, we've been told by management that we can't do that because it can lead to cheating, which I agree with. If other module leaders are doing that for you, Vian, they're breaking the guidelines that we've been given. So that's, if they want to do that, that's fine. But yeah, we've been given guidelines that they need to be sequential. What I will tell you though, just one moment, Mubin, is that you've got 25 questions, you've got 1 hour, so you've got plenty of time. You're not going to run out of time answering these questions. When I did this with a colleague, he did the exam in 10 minutes. And sure, you're students, and so it's going to take you a bit longer than that, but you're not going to run out of time, so you don't need to worry about that. So there is nothing to be gained from saying this is a hard question, I'm going to try and do some easy questions first and go back to that. There's nothing to be gained, Vian. The only people who would gain from having exams non-sequential is if they wanted to try and work together and copy, which you're not meant to be doing. That's why we can't do that. Mubin.
The registry sent a guideline for the exam, and they wrote that the student will be able to go for previous questions.
Okay, well, registry are communicating two different things. They've communicated one thing to teachers and one thing to students, it would appear, which isn't that hard to believe. If registry phone me up and tell me I've got to make it free, which means you can go from question to question in any order, I'll do that. But I'm reluctant to do that, Mabeen, because I think it's going to favor cheaters. And I'm actually quite concerned that actually, yeah, so many of you are pushing for this.
But sir,
Yeah.
we have 50 questions and the question will be
Okay,
different.
Mabeen, you need to listen. You have 25 questions and they are taken from a pool of 50. So, yeah, plenty of you will be having the same questions, maybe not in the same order though. And so, yeah, that gives you time to work on questions together if they are difficult. And so that's just giving you an opportunity to cheat. I know you don't want to cheat, Mabeen, because you're an honest, honourable person, I hope. So why would you want a rule that is not going to benefit you but benefit cheaters, which is going to undermine the module?
Sir,
You've got an average of
ask.
2.5 minutes for each question. That means on the harder questions, you will have maybe 5 minutes to do it. So there's no benefit for you in it not being free rather than sequential.
Sir, I don't have problem, but the student asked for it and
Okay.
they don't like such a way, and I have to say what they want.
Yeah, sure. That's fine, Mabeen. But I have to tell you that it's not changing. It will be sequential, and that shouldn't disadvantage anyone who's doing the exam honestly by themselves. It's only 25 questions. You've got an hour to do it, guys. You've got plenty of time to do it by yourselves. Any questions beyond that?
For the revision, you mostly, like, your questions are mostly from stuff you say and not stuff on the lecture slides. So do you think just going over the lecture slides is enough? Because for most of them, I haven't.
Yeah, I think going through the lecture slides is enough, but really, most of my lecture slides are not detailed, Aween. They're just bullet points for the most part. So you do need to listen to the lectures.
That's what I meant. For, like, stuff I haven't taken notes of.
Yeah. If I was in your shoes, Aween, first I would basically slap myself for not taking notes, which your good teacher told you to do. The next thing I would do is I would read the lecture notes and write my own notes as I understand them. But if there's any bullet points that are not completely clear to me, go to the lecture and listen to the lecture for that bullet point and write notes from that. That way you don't have to go and listen to the entire lecture notes all over again. The other thing I would do is focus a little bit more on the sections which you didn't do too well in your assignments, guys. So if you've been averaging 80-90% in all of the assignments, but you got 60% in aggregate, focus on aggregates and so on. That's another thing that would help.
Have you marked assignment 6?
Assignment 6 is being marked today. I will. Just call me if you want your mark for assignment 6 next week, okay? And I can give you your mark.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what about now? If you ask for our markers.
As I said, it hasn't been marked, Mabeen, so I can't give you a mark. Sorry.
What about assignment 5?
Assignment 5? Yeah, I can tell you assignment 5. How many of you want to know your mark for assignment 5? Put your hands up. Oh, wait. Okay. Just give. Okay. Does anyone not want anyone else to know their marks? Or can I just call them out? Can I just call out what your marks were?
Yes, sir. For me, yes. I don't know about.
Okay. Does anyone not want to keep their mark private? That's completely fine if you do. I just want to ask you. Okay, cool. So I'm going to call out everyone's marks here, okay? Okay, one moment. I'm just looking it up. Okay. Okay, so Mabeen, your mark for assignment 5 was 79%. Nora, your mark was 93%. Who else was asking?
Me, sir.
Vian, okay. Hang on, I'll just try and minimize this so I can see. Yeah, so Vian, you got 79%. Omar, you got 71%. Nahda, you got 86%. And also you wanted for assignment 3, you got 59%, Nahda, but that's going to be remarked, okay? Potentially your mark might go up, and you got 60% in assignment 4. Was there anyone else?
Assignment 3.
Omar, you got 47% in assignment 3. Again, that might be remarked and your grade might go up a bit. Any other questions on your grades? Okay.
Sorry, assignment 5.
Assignment 5, you got 86%.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, any other questions about the curriculum, about the exam? Okay, the final thing then, guys, is I've got questions for you, and please don't be shy. I know it's difficult to maybe criticize an elder or a teacher or someone in authority in your culture. That's not my culture at all. I'm very comfortable with being criticized publicly. I'm not ashamed by it. So first off, with the curriculum, were there any things you particularly liked with this module? Were there any things that were particularly unenjoyable? How can I change as a teacher? How can I improve this module? If you've got any comments or thoughts or advice or statements, I want to hear you now. Please be completely open with me, guys.
I personally think it'd be nicer if the lecture slides were a bit more wordy. That reason everyone doesn't have to take so many notes.
Okay, right. Yeah. Okay, no, that's good, Aween. How do my lecture slides compare with other modules that you're doing, though? Are they reasonably...
Everything else is very different. Like, we don't have any similar modules.
Okay. In terms of the level of detail for my module lecture slides, are they more on the more detailed end of UKH, or the less detailed end?
Less.
Less. Okay.
Because sometimes, like, for example, if I'm just looking at the lectures and I haven't watched the video, I kind of have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a little bit tougher with something like building materials where it's very descriptive.
Yeah,
And it's very qualitative, which means there's a lot of writing, and I can't just give you paragraph after paragraph, because I can't write a book. But I think, and whereas something like maths, you can get a lot more of the information you need on the lecture slides because it's equations. Yeah, but yeah, thanks, Owen. I am aware of that, and I will try to make amends for that in my building the next time I teach this module, and with my other modules too. Any other thoughts? Any other comments? You don't have to give negative criticism. If you think there's good things about this module that you've enjoyed or were good for learning, you can give me positive feedback too.
Okay, I'm gonna go. I think it was really amazing that you let us go at our own pace. I think that was like everyone's advantage, kind of ish. Like you gave it some time for everyone to do things when they want to.
You mean with having pre-recorded lectures rather than doing it by Zoom?
Really good.
Yeah. I've done online learning. There's a lot of negatives about online learning, but I think one of the few positives of online learning is you can watch the resources and watch the lectures in your own time. And so I didn't see why I should take that away from you. So yeah, okay. I'm glad you appreciated that, Owen. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Okay, guys. Did you enjoy this module? Was this one of the more enjoyable modules, or was it one of the harder, or less enjoyable modules that you've done?
No, sir, it was really enjoyable.
Okay. How many
It was enjoyable, sir.
Okay. How many of you it was your favorite module?
It was my favorite model, so I don't know about others.
Okay, Omar, that's good. Lana?
I work with love, sir. I don't want to study like this.
Yeah, so Mubin, sorry, I didn't quite catch that. What did you say?
Like building materials, that doesn't mean anything without labs.
Without labs?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's actually a point. Do you know what's going to happen with the labs? Okay.
Yes.
So in September, I think 20th of September, the plan is that's a week or two before the semester starts. You're all going to come back to university, and we're going to have a week of labs, and we're going to do all of the labs in that time. And hopefully it's really going to consolidate your learning. And a lot of things will become a lot clearer and understandable. But it's not being assessed, but you all need to attend. So be aware of that. So, but yeah, I agree. Not having labs, that's a big disadvantage. Not something I could do anything about though. But we will fix that later. How many of you found this quite unenjoyable? It was one of the least enjoyable modules you've done this year. So for many of you, it was just neutral. Okay, how many of you found this, we're not talking about enjoyment, but in terms of hardness, how hard was the module? Like, was this one of the harder modules or one of the easier modules?
Harder-ish. Because of the
Harder-ish.
detail.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Out of curiosity, Aween, what was your favorite module?
English.
Okay.
No, I mean, this was really, really good. It's just the details. Like, there's nothing that can make this better or, like, less hard, more hard. It's just that, like, stuff
Yeah.
I need to learn.
Yeah. Did you learn much in English, Aween, or did you like it because it was
No.
very easy?
It was very easy.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I think the UG1 modules of English, they're pretty easy for those with a good command of the language already. The English modules do get more challenging though as you go through. Okay. Okay, guys, can you give me any other feedback? What was your favorite material to study?
Wood.
Wood. Okay. Unfortunately, in Kurdistan, there's not a lot of wood. You may never use it as a civil engineer, but hopefully.
That's why it was interesting.
Yeah.
Because we have never learned about it.
Yeah. Did you like all my slides of the swamp carry that we found in at my friend's farm when I was at university?
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a pretty cool project. Okay.
I have a question about the wood. I just remember it.
Okay, go for it, Omar.
To dry the wood in Kurdistan, does we need to wait 2 years or just 2 weeks is enough in summer?
I don't know what you do with your wood from Kurdistan. The truth is you don't have many commercial wood forests where you're cutting down wood for the intention of building things out of it. The only wood I've seen that you've been using in Kurdistan is basically spinder wood, where you're not actually milling it, you're not making it into timber, you're just cutting it down as logs. And that's often used as in formwork, or it's in false work for sort of holding up platforms for making concrete floors. So it's sort of a temporary thing, or for floor beams for some of the older houses. And so, yeah, I don't know what you do, how long you would use for drying it, but yeah, because it's hotter here and it's also quite dry, the temperature, potentially I would say 6 months over the summer. That's probably what I would say would be typical for drying. That would be my guess, Omar.
We don't need kiln in Kurdistan.
You don't need a kiln. Yeah, I mean, kilns are something that you would do with a commercial forest, where you've got a big forest where you're growing trees in order to grow wood, and then you're selling the timber. And basically, because you've got lots and lots of timber, you have a kiln to dry it quickly so that you're not taking up room in your warehouse. So kilns are something that happen when you're cutting down thousands of trees. You just don't have thousands of trees to cut down, Omar, in Kurdistan. Or maybe you once did, but you've cut them all down now. I'm not sure. But yeah, a kiln is something that would happen where there's commercial forests. So they do actually have them in Turkey. So a similar environment, similar weather, but they have commercial forests there. And because they don't want to just have massive warehouses of with lots of wood that's drying over a 2-year period, they have kilns to try and reduce the amount of time drying. So in places like Trabzon and Samsun, where I know they have commercial forests, they also have commercial drying kilns. Does that answer your question, Omar? But it has to do more with the economics of, is it cheaper to have the wood in a warehouse drying over a long period of time, or to use a kiln and get it dried quickly and then we can sell it quickly. So it has more to do with economics than the weather of a certain place.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, I guess everyone's going silent now. But guys, I really appreciate feedback. If you've got any thoughts of anything you particularly liked about this module, anything you didn't like, anything that you thought was helpful, anything that was unhelpful, please let me know. I can't improve this module unless I get feedback, and I can't improve as a teacher unless I get feedback. You're going to have me for a few modules yet. I'll probably be teaching you concrete technology, potentially also land surveying, engineering economics, project management. You've got me for a few modules yet. I can't improve on my modules unless you tell me. So guys, please let me know. With that, I'll probably say goodbye. Is there anything else before I finish this meeting? Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed teaching you this semester. It's been disappointing we couldn't do it in person in class, but you've coped commendably well with online learning. I know it takes a bit of getting used to, but you've done commendably well. So thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
sir.
Bye-bye.
Okay, guys.